Today we're looking at the idea of area of complex shapes, everyone's favorite, especially mine. And today we're going to also learn specifically about how to find the area of trapezoids. So let's get into this and understand our problems here. We're starting with this wonderful shape here. We want to find the area of this complex shape. If we want to find the area of this complex shape, like all complex shapes, we want to divide it into two smaller shapes and then add them together. Okay? So as I look at this, I realize that it looks like I got some sort of rectangle here. So if I draw some dotted lines like that, now I have this rectangle like this, and I have this triangle over here. So because I have this information, now I need to understand that I have two different equations that I have to use to be able to solve this problem. The first equation, of course, being that I need to find the area of this rectangle, and an area of a rectangle is length times width. So with that in mind, I can say my length is 12 and my width is 5, and so my area equals 60. Okay, well, what about this next part? Okay, area of a triangle. Area of a triangle. Let's switch colors just to make it look cooler. There we go. Area of a triangle. Formula: 1/2 base height. Right? All multiplying. 1/2 times the base times the height. All right. So let's figure things out. Suddenly we're left with a conundrum because this is my base and this is my height, but what are those measurements? Well, we got to use the clues we're given to help us solve for this. We know that this distance is 12, and we know that this distance is 4, which would mean our dotted line should be 12 minus 4. So 12 minus 4 gives us an answer of 8. Okay, so that's one of my numbers. I'm going to throw it right there. All right, so now we got 1/2 times 8 times. All right, so we want to find a different side. So now we got to find this distance. Okay, so this distance is a fraction of this distance, and we know that the top part, right, of a rectangle is 5. That means this part has to be congruent with this part, so this part is 5. So 5 minus 15 gives us an answer of 10. All right. So now we have this idea. All right, and then of course, now we want to solve this problem. I can take the 8 times the 10 and divide it by 2, or I could divide the 8 by 2 and multiply that by 10. I'm going to group it that way, so I'm going to choose to group this way. So 8 times 1/2, that's another way of saying 8 divided by 2. 8 divided by 2 is 4. 4 times 10 then is 40, and so I have two numbers. I have a 40 and I have a 60. And so in the end, as I look at the total area of this shape, I would say that the area is 100 millimeters squared, because it's area. Then take a minute and work through this sample as you try and find out the area of this complex shape. All right, we'll come back to this in class. Area of trapezoids. Trapezoids are kind of interesting little shapes. They're not rectangles, they're not parallelograms, they're not triangles. They seem to incorporate things that seem to fit with all of those things. So there must be a relationship between all of these, and let's see if we can figure it out. Right, so if I start with this, right, in the past we've tried to rearrange our shape to be able to come away with a new kind of formula to figure things out. You know, we've taken things like trying to put a rectangle there and figure that out, but as we kind of line things up, we realize that, you know, oh, we got all this space. How are we going to account for all of that space? So that doesn't really work, using the base on the bottom to figure things out. All right, so that doesn't really work. Well, what if we use the base on the top for kind of our main measurement? And of course that now we're missing too much. Right? Missing too much to try and figure things out. And so what we can see after time, though, is how when I put this shape up here next to it, right, we would say that this general area in the middle is the same, and the difference comes from this section compared to this section, which, as we notice, this section compared to this section are actually the congruent. They're the same amount of space. So what does that mean? When it comes to trapezoids, we come away with this idea. If I were to take the average of our base 1 plus this, if I take the average of them and solve it, we're going to notice that this little portion that's not quite in the area is actually the same as this white that isn't being covered up here. And so in the end, if I take this base plus this base and then divide them by 2, I've created an average that allows me to multiply that by this height and solve. So what does this formula look like? And let's talk about this, or let's use it then. So area of a trapezoid. We're going to take 1/2 base 1 plus base 2. So base 1 plus base 2, and we're going to find the average of that. Because average is the sum of the numbers divided by the number of numbers, which in this case there are 2 numbers. So we're going to divide by 2. That's where the 1/2 comes from. Right. 1/2 base 1 plus base 2. So what does this look like when you use this? All right. What we come away with is really a shape that looks like this. But let's move this stuff all out of the way and let's talk about it. All right. So plugging in our formula, we're going to start with 1/2. We're going to take our base 1, base 2. The order really doesn't matter. All right, base 1, we're going to say 10 in this case. Base 2, we're going to say is 12. Right, so we're going to add those two together, and then we're going to multiply this idea. I don't know why I didn't grab both of them. Come on. Whatever. Thinks the circle is a part of it. All right, we're going to multiply that then by our height, which we see our height here is 6. So 10 plus 12, start inside the parentheses. That gives us the answer of 22. 22 times 1/2 times 6. All right. Now that we have it in this form, you really have a choice because of the associative property of multiplication. I can either take half of 22 or I can take half of 6. Just for convenience sakes, because I really want to find the average, I'm going to take half of 22. So half of 22, 1/2 times 22 gives you an answer of 11. I'm going to take 11 and multiply by 6. In the end, I'm going to come away with an answer of 6. Label says inches, and its area, inches squared. So the key idea here is, as strange as this formula looks, this formula right here, the fact is we're using principles we've already understood. We have a half times the base plus the other base, so we're finding an average, times the height. By finding that average, in essence, we are creating this rectangle, which is the area of that trapezoid. How nice. How nice. Your turn. Find the area of this trapezoid. That's lesson 75.